What do you do on Sundays?
Nothing in particular. What do you do?
Oh, nothing lately. I mean, if you'd like to come visit me sometime, you're welcome to. At least there's some pretty country around where I live. Would you like to come visit me this Sunday?
Yes.
What a strange girl you are.
Why?
Flung out of space.
Cate Blanchett and Rooney Mara in a scene from Carol. I'm delighted to say that Cate Blanchett is back on the show. Hello, Kate. How are you?
I'm very well.
And
how are you?
Just before we started recording, you were telling us of your love for radio. Was that radio drama that you were particularly thinking of?
Yes, I love radio drama. I mean, I find it really interesting when you hear someone's voice, a scene from a film, and you're not distracted by the visuals. I just find it such an imaginative place. I grew up with my grandmother, and she always listened to radio plays and talkback radio, and so I got obsessed with people's voices and the way they breathed and what they didn't say, and what words they chose and what they. I'm getting very self-conscious just listening to what I'm saying now. No, what am I really thinking?
Yeah. No, the sound is very. Anyone who works in this kind of job is obsessed with sound and voices, and some clips really work on the radio, and some clips don't. Animation is extraordinary on the radio because so much work has gone into the voiceover.
Yes.
And you're very much you're intimately involved with theatre anyway, or certainly have been for many years. So you must be thinking all the time about the drama and the voices and the characterization.
Yes, but it's like it's why I love dance. It's the suspension between one movement and the next movement. It's those moments of silence. It's the intake of breath.
Yeah. Anyway, we've moved off Carol. In fact, we played the clip from Carol, and we haven't actually referred to anything about the clip. Just tell us about your character and how you came to be a part of this, because it's a fairly long story getting this onto the screen in the first place. But explain Carol.
Well, Carol was originally called The Price of Salt. It's a Patricia Highsmith novel, her second novel, I think, written under a pseudonym. About a young shop girl's obsession and love for an older woman called Carol, and they meet in a department store, and Carol leaves her gloves there. She's come to buy a present for her young daughter, and then Therese, who's played by Rooney, returns the gloves, and they strike up a friendship and a love that they don't actually know what to call. The love that has no name.
Why don't they know what to call it?
Well, it's said. I mean, it's easy to forget how this is recent history, but the love that these two women felt for one another and ultimately consummate is illegal. So and neither of these women don't fit neatly into a subculture, a female subculture. So it's. There's a lot of impediments apart from their gender. Their age gap, the difference between Carol's, world-weary, set of experiences and Therese's relative inexperience, that keeps them apart.
The scene where you meet, right, for the very first time in the department store. That is love at first sight, isn't it? I mean, it's a fabulous scene in that department store. Everything in it, the whole movie looks beautiful, but I don't think I've seen a movie with love at first sight like that for a long time.
It's interesting because there's a line in the book, I can't remember exactly what it is, where Therese said that she would call, the feelings that she had for Carol love, except that Carol was a woman. So there's no language around the feelings they have for one another. So love, if you look up love in the thesaurus, I'm sure bewilderment is in there somewhere. I mean, thesaurus is such an interesting tool for an actor. You take words like love, which we all think we know what it means, and you look at all the different shades of meaning, and that's what you play. And in that moment, if we go back to the moment, have you ever been in love? Do you remember falling in love for the first time? It's a rush of conflicting different feelings, which is why your heart races. It's akin to panic.
Yes,
often.
And I think the relationship with Rooney Mara's character doesn't follow. I mean, I haven't read the original book.
Oh, it's very good.
Doesn't follow the path that you're expecting, because your story is a very restrained story.
But the feelings that they're experiencing are volcanic. And I think that the challenge of playing roles like Therese and Carol in this film are that so much is going on underneath, but they can't find expression for it. And so it's a really interesting sort of push and pull to play. Yeah. I found.
Why was it? If I've got the facts right, it was in development for 15 years.
Yes.
And even when you'd filmed it and it had been screened, whether it was actually going to get released was still an issue. Why has this film had such an extraordinary kind of genesis?
Well, it's a beautiful, beautiful screenplay that Phyllis Nage has written. And it did take a long time to get up, and I've been attached to it for a long time. And through all its sort of ups and downs and ons and offs, and I thought, well, I'd sort of let the idea go. I didn't think it would ever get made. And then Todd, completely out of the blue, called me and asked me if I was still attached to it. And I said, well, if he was interested. Todd Haynes, who directed it, and Sandy Powell, wonderful, wonderful costume designer, who I was actually working with at the time doing Cinderella. Brought it to Todd, and then it suddenly became a film. And that's the thing about screenplays, is you need to find out who's going to look through the camera at them, and so then it came together quite quickly. And it wasn't that it was ever going to get released; it was just when to release it. It feels quite timely, and I think if it had been made, even if it had been made exactly in the same way 10 years ago. But films are so temporal. Would it ever have been made exactly the same? I don't know.
So what was it about?
I think it would have been perceived as being quite political. And I think that because a lot of these, the notion of same-sex marriage, it's in common parlance now. That somehow, and there's a lot of films dealing with different forms of love between different types of people, that somehow films like this don't need to stand for everyone. So in fact, Todd has been able to make a film that's about the idea of falling in love, and the women's gender is a part of it, but it is not all.
It didn't fit. It clearly is a gay love story, but it doesn't really feel as though it's a gay love story. Does that make sense?
Yes, I feel what makes it fresh in a way is that it's between two women, so you feel like you're seeing something for the first time. But in fact, it's dealing with the very human experience of falling in love. No matter what your gender.
And you mentioned the Patricia Highsmith novel. This was the follow-up to Strangers on a Train, so that was clearly a very, very big story. But she publishes it under a pseudonym, under Claire Morgan.
Which I think she found very annoying. I would have thought Patricia Highsmith would have loved being published under a pseudonym, to have that secret. Because, that's what's so wonderful too.
Is that because it was a dangerous novel? And people are always complaining about spoilers, but I'm now talking about the book, okay, which came out a very long time ago. The fact that the novel about two women falling in love had a kind of a vaguely positive outcome was seen as extraordinary. And
oh, yes, absolutely. It was revolutionary. Before that, any novel that had love between two women, either one of the women was killed herself or was redeemed by the love of a good man, and this clearly doesn't happen in this story, and so it was revolutionary.
So,
but I did read a lot of pulp, so-called lesbian fiction written at the time, in a way to see the world in which Carol and Therese did not inhabit, the language they did not have access to, because it's often what the character is not that helps you find out what they are.
So what weren't they?
What weren't they? They weren't out. They were very, very isolated. There's a long strand of melancholy and loneliness in the film, I think, because they're not part of a subset or a community. Even though Carol has a very, her best friend Abby, they clearly have had some sort of physical relationship in the past, and it's never quite got at what that is. Because it's private in a way. The film is very private. It's very intimate, and so the whole experience with Therese is new and fresh and dangerous for Carol.
The film looks absolutely fantastic, and people will come away with all kinds of different images.
In a dreamlike way, I hope.
Yes, but I records.
Yes, remember those?
clothes, makeup, cigarettes. Everything is treated very kind of lovingly.
You can say the word erotic, it's all right. Can
Well-
you say the word erotic on
Well,
BBC?
well, you absolutely can. We had an argument on the show about whether the lacing of a film into a projector could be erotic, but
I think it could. If Todd Haynes filmed it, it could.
but it is so. It has, even though it's very period. It is 1950, 51, 52. It has a sort of a timeless general feel.
Yes, but it's interesting, and I think Todd's wonderful at inviting the actors he works, everyone actually on set, into his mood board. He gives you an extraordinary playlist and a wonderful mood board, and he introduced me to a lot of female photographers who I had never seen before. Vivian Maier, and when we were shooting, there was a wonderful documentary, coincidentally, that came out about her. And Helen Levitt, and we looked at Ruth Orkin, and so there was a lot of the female gaze, female photographers who were working in the 50s, and Vivian Maier's work obviously wasn't published during her printed, and so no one knew about it during her lifetime, and so it was discovered subsequently. Life in reflection, and a really interesting outsider's perspective on 50s New York.
Yes,
and I found that. It was revolutionary. So I felt like we all went in with a similar sort of fresh look on what was perhaps a almost cliched silhouette of the 50s, because it's been so represented recently in cinema.
Kate, we appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed for joining us today.
Thank you.